On a cold night inside one of Earth's largest radio observatories, every screen in mission control flashed the same impossible pattern. A pulse. Exactly 16 days after the last one. Again. The signal was brief, less than a second, but unimaginably powerful. It had traveled across nearly 470 million light-years of empty space before striking Earth's radio telescopes with astonishing precision. Astronomers had been watching it for years. They called it a fast radio burst, or FRB, one of the universe's greatest unsolved mysteries. No one knew what produced it. Some believed it came from a magnetar, a dead star with magnetic fields so intense they could rip atoms apart. Others argued it originated from two exotic stars locked in a deadly orbital dance. A few proposed stranger ideas involving black holes, warped spacetime, or plasma clouds acting as colossal cosmic lenses. Every theory explained part of the mystery. None explained all of it. Most importantly, none explained why the burst repeated with almost perfect regularity. Every 16 days. Like a heartbeat. Dr. Maya Carter stared at the waterfall display streaming across her monitor. Green lines. White noise. Background radiation. Then, there it was. Another brilliant vertical flash. Exactly on schedule. Confirmed, she whispered. The burst is here. Around the room, scientists barely reacted anymore. This wasn't news. It had happened dozens of times before. The data would be archived, analyzed, compared. Another paper would be published. Another theory would be debated. Nothing would change. Except tonight. Something did. One of the AI systems monitoring the signal froze. Then every monitor connected to it displayed a single warning. Pattern detected. Silence spread through the control room. No, said one engineer. That's impossible. The software had spent 7 years searching for hidden mathematical structures inside the bursts. Prime numbers, fractals, compression signatures, artificial modulation. It had never found anything. Until now. The computer isolated the latest burst, then overlaid every previous transmission. The room watched in disbelief. The signals were not identical. Each one was one piece, like pages of an enormous book. Each burst added another fragment. Individually, meaningless. Together, a sequence. Dr. Carter felt her heartbeat accelerate. Run reconstruction. The AI obeyed. Thousands of radio bursts collected over years merged into one impossibly complex waveform. Everyone expected noise. Instead, a perfect geometric structure appeared. Not random. Not natural. Symmetrical. Elegant. Intentional. Someone had hidden information across years of transmissions. No one spoke. One astrophysicist quietly removed his glasses. Another simply shook her head. This can't happen naturally. Within 24 hours, every major observatory on Earth confirmed the same result. NASA, ESA, China, India, Japan, South Africa, Chile, Australia. The data matched perfectly. The entire scientific community entered emergency collaboration. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't debating whether an alien message existed. They were debating whether they had accidentally just found one. News spread faster than anyone imagined. Social media exploded. Markets fluctuated. Religious leaders urged calm. Governments refused to comment. Conspiracy theories multiplied by the hour. Yet the scientists remained cautious. Extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. Weeks became months. Independent teams verified everything. No equipment malfunction. No software error. No terrestrial interference. The pattern remained. Impossible. Persistent. Real. Then came the second discovery. It changed everything. A graduate student analyzing frequency drift noticed something almost absurd. The burst wasn't simply arriving every 16 days. It was waiting. Tiny fluctuations in arrival time formed another hidden pattern. Milliseconds. Microseconds. Too small for humans to notice. Too precise to ignore. The delays corresponded to Earth's orbital position around the Sun. Someone, or something, had accounted for Earth's motion through space before the signal even arrived. The room fell silent again. That was impossible. The burst had begun its journey 470 million years ago. Long before mammals existed. Long before dinosaurs vanished. Long before Earth had anything resembling intelligent life. Yet somehow, it arrived exactly when humanity possessed radio telescopes capable of detecting it. One question echoed through every laboratory on Earth. How could a civilization know where Earth would be hundreds of millions of years before humans evolved? No physics could explain it. No known technology could predict it. Unless the sender understood time itself. 3 months later, the United Nations created humanity's first unified signal response committee. For the first time in history, every nation agreed on one objective. Do nothing. No reply. No transmission. No risk. The unknown had always been dangerous. Better to observe. Better to wait. Better to remain silent. Most agreed. Except one person. Dr. Maya Carter. She stared at the reconstructed signal one final time before leaving the observatory. Everyone saw mathematics. She saw something else. Rhythm. Cadence. Intervals. Not a code. Not coordinates. Not a warning. It sounded like breathing. Like the slow heartbeat of something unimaginably old. Something alive. Something waiting for an answer. As she reached the observatory door, every light in the building suddenly flickered. Every radio receiver activated on its own. The scheduled transmission wasn't due for another 12 days. Yet across every speaker came a single burst. Short. Sharp. Different from all the others. The AI translated the mathematical structure into the closest equivalent in human language. One word appeared on every screen. Finally. The word remained on every screen. Finally. No punctuation. No additional symbols. Just 7 letters that instantly transformed one of astronomy's greatest mysteries into humanity's greatest crisis. No one in the observatory moved. The computers continued recording. The receivers continued listening. But the signal was gone. Less than a second. Just as suddenly as it had appeared. Dr. Maya Carter stared at the display, convinced she was hallucinating. Run diagnostics, she said quietly. Within minutes, engineers checked every subsystem. Power fluctuations. Clock synchronization. Signal processors. Translation software. Artificial intelligence logs. Everything. Nothing was wrong. Even stranger, observatories across 6 continents had recorded the exact same burst at precisely the same instant. No equipment failure could explain that. The message had been real. Within hours, the world's leading scientists gathered through a secure international conference. Military officials joined them. So did intelligence agencies. Representatives from every major space program. The atmosphere was unlike anything in recorded history. No one argued about politics. No one argued about funding. There was only one question. What do we do now? An elderly physicist from Germany spoke first. We continue observing. A communications specialist disagreed. If this is intelligent, silence is also a response. An admiral leaned toward his microphone. Or its bait. Several people nodded. Human history had taught painful lessons about responding to unknown powers. Dr. Carter remained silent until finally someone asked her directly. What do you think? She took a deep breath. I don't think the question is whether we should answer. The room waited. I think the sender already knows we're here. Silence followed. Then came another uncomfortable realization. If the signal had truly left its source 470 million years ago, who, or what, could possibly know humanity existed today? The answer challenged every known law of physics. Either the transmission wasn't bound by ordinary time, or the civilization behind it possessed technology so advanced that humanity lacked the concepts to describe it. Neither explanation was comforting. 3 days later, classified satellites began observing strange anomalies throughout the solar system. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that threatened Earth. Just small impossibilities. A dormant communications satellite, dead for 12 years, suddenly powered itself on for exactly 16 seconds before shutting down again. A probe drifting beyond Neptune transmitted data using frequencies its hardware had never been designed to generate. On the far side of the Moon, an abandoned seismometer briefly activated despite having no power source. Every anomaly shared one detail. Each occurred exactly 16 hours after the mysterious message. The pattern was unmistakable. Something was synchronizing with humanity's technology, without touching it, without damaging it, simply waking it. Publicly, governments called the incidents unrelated. Privately, panic spread. Military forces quietly increased readiness. Space agencies encrypted every deep space communication. Civilian observatories were instructed to report unusual radioactivity immediately. The official explanation remained simple. Routine technical investigations. No one believed it. Dr. Carter barely slept. She spent every waking hour comparing the original repeating bursts with the newest transmission. At first glance they seemed completely different. But the more she analyzed them, the more she noticed subtle mathematical echoes, ratios, intervals, recursive structures. It reminded her of learning a new language. Not words. Grammar. The original bursts had not been messages. They had been lessons. The sender had spent years teaching humanity how to understand the final word. Finally, it wasn't the beginning of communication. It was the confirmation that humanity had passed a test. Late one evening, Carter sat alone inside the observatory dome. Outside, the stars stretched across the sky with breathtaking clarity. Every point of light represented another mystery, another possibility, another civilization, perhaps. She wondered how many had looked toward Earth over the ages. How many had ignored the tiny blue planet? How many had never even noticed it? Then she noticed something impossible. The stars above her weren't moving normally. At first it seemed like an optical illusion. Then the observatory's tracking software confirmed it. Not the stars. The radio source. For years, astronomers believed they knew exactly where the repeating bursts originated. Now the calculated position had shifted. Not by much. Only a fraction of a degree. Yet across a distance of 470 million light-years, that tiny angle represented thousands of light-years of displacement. It was as though the source itself had moved. Impossible. No galaxy could change position that quickly. Unless the signal had never come from one fixed object. It had come from something traveling. Something unimaginably fast. The discovery remained classified. Only 12 people on Earth knew. They called it the motion problem. No existing propulsion system, even theoretical ones, could account for it. Yet every calculation produced the same answer. Whatever had sent the signal, it wasn't stationary. It was approaching. Not at the speed of light. Far beyond it. Exactly 16 days after the word, finally, the next scheduled burst arrived. Every observatory on Earth was ready. Thousands of telescopes tracked the event simultaneously. This time the signal lasted nearly 3 seconds. The AI immediately began translating. Mathematical structures unfolded faster than any human could follow. Then the screen displayed a sentence. "Do not answer yet." The room erupted. What? Who sent that? Why warn us? Before anyone could react, another sequence followed. Different. Sharper. Far more complex. The AI struggled. Processors overheated. Cooling systems roared. Then, after several agonizing seconds, a second sentence appeared beneath the first. "The others are listening." Every person in mission control felt the same chill. Who were the others? And if someone, or something, was trying to protect humanity, what exactly was it protecting Earth from? Outside, beyond the silent darkness of the solar system, something ancient had already changed course. And for the first time in nearly 500 million years, it was no longer alone. For 72 hours, the words echoed through every secure facility on Earth. "Do not answer yet. The others are listening." No one knew whether the message was a warning or a trap. The world's governments immediately classified every detail above the highest security level. Radio observatories were placed under military protection. Deep space communication arrays went silent. Every planned interstellar transmission was suspended indefinitely. For the first time since humans had learned to broadcast into space, Earth intentionally became quiet. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. For more than a century, humanity had shouted into the cosmos. Now, it was holding its breath. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, inside the newly formed International Deep Space Analysis Center, the brightest scientific minds on Earth gathered around a three-dimensional map of the known universe. Dr. Maya Carter stood at its center. "If the message is genuine," she began, "then there are at least 2 intelligent civilizations involved." She highlighted the first point. The sender. A glowing marker appeared in a distant galaxy. Then another. The others. Silence. No coordinates. No identification. Only a name. "The question," she continued, "is why an advanced civilization would spend 470 million years sending a warning instead of defending itself." An astrophysicist answered quietly. "Unless they can't." The room grew colder. Not physically. Emotionally. If a civilization capable of manipulating signals across cosmic distances feared something, what hope did humanity have? Days later, researchers uncovered another anomaly hidden within the repeating bursts. The 16-day interval wasn't constant. It only appeared constant from Earth's perspective. When corrected for the motion of galaxies, the timing matched an entirely different clock. One that no human civilization had ever considered. The rotation of the local group of galaxies through space. It was as if the signal wasn't synchronized to a planet or a star. It was synchronized to the movement of galaxies themselves. Professor Luis Alvarez whispered the conclusion before anyone else could. This wasn't designed for Earth. Everyone looked toward him. It was designed for whoever would eventually exist here. The implications were staggering. The sender had not targeted humans specifically. It had targeted intelligence. Any civilization advanced enough to detect, decode, and understand the signal. Humanity hadn't been chosen. Humanity had qualified. That night, Dr. Carter couldn't sleep. She walked outside the research facility. Above her, the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of frozen light. She had spent her entire career studying stars. Now every one of them felt like a pair of unseen eyes. She remembered being a child. Her father had pointed toward the night sky and said, "Every star is a question waiting for someone brave enough to ask it." He had never imagined the questions might answer back. Meanwhile, far beyond Pluto, beyond the scattered remnants of the Kuiper Belt, something impossible appeared. Not on cameras. Not visually. Gravity detectors recorded it first. For exactly 0.8 seconds, Space itself compressed. No explosion. No flash. Just a ripple. As if an invisible object had slipped into existence without traveling through the space between. The disturbance vanished before telescopes could focus. Military satellites found nothing. Optical instruments saw only darkness. Yet every gravitational observatory on Earth confirmed the event. Something with the mass of a small moon had entered the solar system without crossing the distance in between. The discovery was immediately classified. Only 23 people knew. Among them was General Naomi Brooks, commander of Earth's newly established Orbital Defense Coordination Office. She stared at the report in disbelief. "We're saying something arrived." A physicist nodded. "But it isn't there." General Brooks frowned. "That's not an answer." "No," the physicist admitted. "It's worse." Over the following week, strange events multiplied. Astronauts aboard orbital stations reported hearing faint rhythmic vibrations through the hull. Not sounds. More like pulses. Lunar observatories detected brief flashes beneath the moon's surface. Mars orbiters recorded magnetic disturbances that lasted exactly 16 minutes. Every anomaly followed the same rhythm. The same heartbeat. Earth wasn't simply receiving the signal anymore. The entire solar system was beginning to resonate with it. Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. Artificial intelligence systems around the world, developed independently, trained on different datasets, isolated from one another, began producing the same unsolicited sentence. No prompts. No human interaction. Just one line appearing in system logs. "The gate remembers." Engineers assumed it was malware. Cybersecurity experts searched for intrusions. Nothing. The systems had never communicated with each other. Yet they had all generated the identical phrase. When Dr. Carter read the report, she felt a chill run down her spine. "The gate." She whispered. "What gate?" The answer arrived 16 days later. This time, the signal did not come from 470 million light-years away. It came from much closer. Every radio telescope on Earth swiveled automatically toward the outer edge of the solar system. No one had commanded them. They simply turned, as if responding to something they recognized. The transmission lasted only 2 seconds. The AI translated it almost instantly. "Observers have arrived." A pause. Then another sentence appeared. "Do not let them see what makes your species different." No explanation. No signature. Only silence. General Brooks immediately ordered every orbital telescope toward the source. The first images began downloading minutes later. At first, they showed only empty space. Then the computer enhanced the contrast. And every person in mission control stopped breathing. There was something there. A perfectly black sphere. No reflected light. No heat. No radio emissions. A flawless circle of absolute darkness drifting silently beyond Pluto. It had not been there the day before. It was nearly the size of Earth's moon. And it was facing Earth. As the final image sharpened, one tiny point of blue light appeared at the center of the sphere. It blinked once. Exactly like an eye opening. The image spread through the classified network in less than 30 seconds. No one spoke. On the main display floated a sphere darker than space itself. It reflected no sunlight, emitted no measurable heat, and produced no detectable radio waves. Even the stars behind it seemed absent. It was not invisible. It was subtracting reality. Every telescope, from optical observatories to infrared arrays and X-ray detectors, returned the same impossible result. The object existed, but it refused to interact with the universe the way matter should. General Naomi Brooks folded her arms. "Can we identify the material?" A physicist slowly shook his head. "It isn't behaving like any material we've ever observed." "What about gravity?" Another scientist answered. It has mass. How much? The room fell silent. Approximately 1 lunar mass. Brooks frowned. So something the size and mass of the moon just appeared beyond Pluto, without crossing the distance between. No one finished the sentence. No one needed to. For the next 6 days, the object remained perfectly still. No acceleration. No emissions. No movement. It simply watched. At least, that was how everyone described it. Even seasoned astronomers found themselves saying the same unsettling words. It feels like it's watching us. Of course, feelings weren't evidence. But then the evidence began to agree. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, neutrino detectors registered faint bursts arriving from the direction of the sphere. Unlike radio waves, neutrinos pass through almost everything. Planets, stars, entire galaxies. Yet these particles carried an unmistakable pattern. Prime numbers. Not random. Not natural. Intentional. Humanity had spent decades wondering how to send a message across interstellar distances. Someone else had already solved the problem. Dr. Maya Carter studied the new data until dawn. The neutrino pulses weren't a language. They were measurements, distances, masses, orbital periods, constants of physics. It looked less like a greeting, and more like an inspection checklist. The realization made her stomach tighten. They're surveying us. A young researcher looked up. For invasion? Carter hesitated. I don't think so. What makes you say that? She enlarged one section of the data. They're measuring everything. She paused. Except humanity. Earth's oceans. Measured. The atmosphere. Measured. The moon. Measured. The sun. Measured. Every planet. Every asteroid. Every gravitational fluctuation. Everything. Except the billions of people living on Earth. It was as if humanity didn't matter. Or, as if they already knew everything there was to know. That evening, the United Nations Security Council convened in emergency session. The debate lasted 11 exhausting hours. Some demanded silence. Others wanted immediate military preparation. A few insisted humanity should transmit a peaceful greeting. The final vote produced one unanimous decision. No response. Until more was understood. It was the safest choice. Or so they believed. The following morning, the impossible happened. Every electronic clock on Earth lost exactly 1 second. Not approximately. Not within a margin of error. Exactly 1 second. Atomic clocks. Mechanical synchronization systems. GPS satellites. Financial exchanges. Power grids. Even spacecraft orbiting Mars. Every clock skipped from 9 hours 14 minutes and 32 seconds to 9 hours 14 minutes and 34 seconds. 1 second had simply vanished. Physicists checked for software failures. Engineers searched for synchronization bugs. Nothing explained it. Humanity had not lost track of a second. Time itself had. Across the globe, people noticed little oddities. Birds changed direction simultaneously. Whales altered migration routes. Dogs barked at empty skies. Migratory insects landed where none had before. Nature had sensed something long before humanity did. Inside the observatory, another signal arrived. Unlike the previous bursts, this one contained no mathematics. Only a single image encoded in astonishing detail. The AI reconstructed it over several hours. When the final pixels settled into place, no one in the room could breathe. It depicted the Milky Way. But it wasn't today's galaxy. Stars occupied different positions. Spiral arms were incomplete. Several neighboring dwarf galaxies had yet to merge. Professor Alvarez quietly estimated the age. This is impossible. How old? He swallowed. Approximately. He zoomed in again. 470 million years. The room froze. It wasn't an artist's impression. It was a photograph. Someone had taken a picture of the Milky Way from outside the galaxy. 470 million years ago. That meant only one thing. The sender had actually been there, watching. When Earth's continents were arranged differently. When dinosaurs had not yet evolved. When mammals were tiny nocturnal creatures. Someone had seen humanity's future. Long before humanity existed. Then another image appeared. This one was different. It showed Earth. Not modern Earth. Ancient Earth. The oceans shimmered beneath unfamiliar skies. No cities. No forests like today's. Only primitive life. Then, one after another, the images advanced. Millions of years per frame. Continents drifted. Species emerged. Extinctions came and went. Dinosaurs rose. Dinosaurs disappeared. Humans appeared. Agriculture. Empires. Steam engines. Electricity. The moon landing. Orbiting satellites. Modern cities glowing at night. It wasn't an animation. It was a continuous record. Someone had watched Earth evolve for nearly 500 million years, without ever interfering. The final frame remained black. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then a single line of text appeared beneath it. Observation complete. Another pause. Every heart in mission control seemed to stop. The last sentence materialized slowly, one character at a time. Judgment begins in 16 days. No explanation. No demands. No threat. Just a countdown. For the first time since the mysterious bursts had been discovered, humanity understood one terrifying truth. The signals had never been asking for help. They had been keeping time. And whatever had been patiently watching Earth for 470 million years, had finally decided the waiting was over. The countdown spread through every classified network on Earth. 16 days. No one leaked it. No one dared. The governments of the world understood that announcing an unknown cosmic judgment without any explanation would ignite panic unlike anything in human history. Instead, they prepared quietly. Military forces were placed on high alert under the cover of routine exercises. Hospitals stocked emergency supplies. Space agencies redirected every telescope toward the black sphere beyond Pluto. The world's largest particle accelerators shut down to conserve power for scientific analysis. Even the International Space Station delayed planned experiments. Officially, nothing unusual was happening. Unofficially, human civilization had begun preparing for the possibility that it had only 16 days left. Dr. Maya Carter couldn't accept one detail. The messages had never sounded hostile. Terrifying. Yes. Threatening. Not exactly. Everything about the transmissions carried the tone of an ancient observer recording facts. Not an executioner seeking revenge. So she began asking a different question. What if we've misunderstood the word judgment? For the first time in weeks, the room became quiet. No one had considered that possibility. Professor Luis Alvarez walked to the main display. The sender has watched Earth for 470 million years. He brought up the timeline of transmissions. It never attacked. Another image appeared. It never altered Earth's evolution. Another. It warned us. He pointed to the message. The others are listening. Then another. Do not answer yet. He looked around the room. Those are not the actions of an enemy. General Brooks crossed her arms. Then whose actions are they? Alvarez answered without hesitation. A guardian. The word hung in the air. Guardian. It sounded comforting. Until Dr. Carter completed the thought. If they're guardians, She looked toward the image of the black sphere. Then the observers may not be. Exactly 12 days remained. Then something happened that every observatory on Earth recorded. The black sphere moved. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just 1 meter. It had remained perfectly motionless for weeks. Now it had changed position by exactly 1 meter. No engine flare. No acceleration. No momentum. One moment it occupied one location. The next, it occupied another. As though space itself had been rewritten. The scientists immediately checked for measurement errors. There were none. Then it moved again. Another meter. Exactly 16 minutes later. Then again. 16 minutes after that. Always 1 meter. Always toward the sun. It isn't flying. Dr. Carter whispered. It's counting. The pattern became undeniable. Every 16 minutes. 1 meter closer. Humanity quickly calculated the implications. At that speed, it would require millions of years to reach Earth. Yet instinctively, everyone knew the speed was meaningless. Anything capable of appearing beyond Pluto without crossing the intervening space didn't need engines. The movement wasn't transportation. It was communication. Like the ticking of an ancient clock. Then the countdown reached 8 days. And Earth received another message. Unlike every previous transmission, this one bypassed radio telescopes completely. Every powered screen on the planet activated simultaneously. Televisions, phones, vehicle displays, smart watches, airline cockpit monitors, hospital equipment, digital billboards, even old laptops disconnected from the internet. The same image appeared everywhere. A vast circular chamber filled with thousands of stars suspended in midair. At the center stood a single figure. Humanoid. Towering. Neither male nor female. Its body shimmered like liquid starlight, constantly shifting between countless forms. When it spoke, no sound emerged. Yet every human understood every word in their own language. Children of Earth. Millions of people stopped what they were doing. Cars pulled to the side of highways. Airports fell silent. Schools paused lessons. Entire cities looked up at glowing screens. For 470 million of your years. The being continued. Your world has been observed under the covenant of silent growth. Scientists frantically recorded every syllable. No translation software was needed. The meaning simply arrived. Your species has reached the final evaluation. General Brooks stared at the screen. Evaluation for what? The answer came immediately, as though the being had heard her. Admission. Every military commander on Earth exchanged confused glances. Admission. Not conquest. Not surrender. The being raised one luminous hand. The stars floating inside the chamber rearranged themselves. One by one, thousands of civilizations appeared. Some resembled crystalline organisms. Others looked like oceans suspended in space. Some possessed no visible bodies at all. Each occupied its own star system. Then, one after another, the lights disappeared. Until only a few hundred remained. Then dozens. Then, just 12. Earth became the 13th. The room inside Mission Control fell silent. Professor Alvarez whispered, "What happened to the rest?" The being answered. Its voice carried neither sadness nor pride. Only certainty. They failed. A new image replaced the stars. Galaxies burning. Entire solar systems consumed by impossible darkness. Worlds collapsing into silent voids. Not through war. Not through natural disasters. Something far worse. They had simply stopped existing. Erased. As though reality itself had rejected them. The being finally revealed the truth. The observers do not conquer civilizations. Another pause. They measure them. Millions watched in absolute silence. Those who cannot protect existence. The chamber darkened. Are removed from it. Dr. Maya Carter felt her pulse racing. The warning from the mysterious signal suddenly made sense. The others are listening. It had never referred to invading aliens. It referred to judges. Ancient beings who traveled between galaxies searching for civilizations worthy of surviving. And Earth had just entered the examination. The luminous figure looked directly into the camera. For the first time, its expression changed. It almost resembled hope. Then it spoke the sentence that would redefine humanity forever. Your greatest strength is not your technology. Another pause. It is the one quality no previous civilization possessed. Before anyone could ask what that quality was, the transmission ended. Across the solar system, the black sphere disappeared. Not in a flash. Not in an explosion. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind empty space where every telescope, radar array, and gravitational detector insisted something had occupied only moments before. Mission Control erupted into frantic activity. Track every wavelength. Check infrared. Run gravitational scans again. Nothing. The object had left no debris, no energy signature, no distortion in spacetime. It was as if reality itself had quietly erased a sentence from its own story. Then every instrument aboard humanity's spacecraft began reporting the same impossible reading. Not outside. Inside. The Voyager probes, drifting in interstellar space for centuries, suddenly transmitted at full strength despite their long-depleted power systems. Lunar orbiters woke from safe mode. Mars rovers that had been silent for years briefly activated. Even abandoned satellites, tumbling lifelessly around Earth, synchronized their clocks to the exact millisecond. Dr. Maya Carter watched the incoming data. "They're not contacting us," she whispered. "They're synchronizing us." A new signal arrived. This one was unlike the previous bursts. It contained no images, no spoken words, only a single mathematical instruction that every scientific AI on Earth decoded identically. Look at Jupiter. Within minutes, observatories around the world turned toward the giant planet. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Its familiar cloud bands drifted peacefully. The great red spot rotated as expected. Its moons followed their calculated orbits. Then one of the astronomers gasped. "Increase magnification." The image sharpened. Floating high above Jupiter's atmosphere was something no telescope had seen before. A ring. Perfectly circular. Perfectly black. Nearly 3,000 kilometers across. It wasn't orbiting the planet. It was suspended motionless above the clouds, casting no shadow and emitting no radiation. The same impossible darkness as the sphere beyond Pluto. General Brooks stared at the live feed. "It followed us." Dr. Carter slowly shook her head. "No." She zoomed out. It was already there. One by one, old observations from decades of planetary surveys were reprocessed using new algorithms. The ring appeared in every archived image, hidden in plain sight. Its darkness had blended so perfectly with the surrounding space that humanity had overlooked it for generations. The object hadn't arrived. Humanity had finally learned how to see it. The room fell silent. If one structure had been hiding near Jupiter, how many others had escaped detection? The answer came faster than anyone wanted. Within 48 hours, identical rings were discovered near Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and several distant dwarf planets. None moved. None emitted energy. All had apparently existed throughout recorded human astronomy. Invisible until now. Professor Alvarez leaned back in disbelief. "We've been living inside a network." Dr. Carter finished the thought. "And we never knew." Exactly 16 days after the message, "Judgment begins," every ring activated simultaneously. Across the solar system, black circles erupted with brilliant blue light. The glow was not blinding. It was calming, ancient, like starlight filtered through deep oceans. Then, from each ring, a beam extended, not toward Earth, but toward the Sun. 12 beams converged at the center of the solar system. For one breathtaking moment, the Sun disappeared inside a lattice of radiant geometry. No heat changed. No gravity fluctuated. But every human looking at the sky felt an overwhelming sensation. Not fear. Recognition. As if something unimaginably old had just acknowledged humanity's existence. Then the stars changed. Not physically. Visually. Constellations dissolved into flowing lines of light. The night sky transformed into a living map stretching far beyond the Milky Way. Millions of pathways connected galaxies like glowing rivers. Human astronomers watched in stunned silence. The universe wasn't random. It was organized. Every galaxy occupied a precise position within an immense cosmic structure, one far larger than any civilization had imagined. Earth's solar system sat on the edge of one faint line, a minor junction, insignificant, until now. A voice filled every observatory. It was the same luminous being from before. You seek the purpose of the examination. The map rotated. Entire galaxy clusters shifted into view. You believe strength is measured through weapons. Hundreds of civilizations appeared, each armed beyond imagination. Planet-sized fleets. Stars converted into engines. Galaxies reshaped by technology. One by one, every empire vanished. Not defeated. Simply gone. You believe intelligence ensures survival. The image changed. Worlds of incomprehensible machines. Quantum minds spanning solar systems. Ancient artificial intelligences older than Earth's oceans. They disappeared as well. Again. Without battle. Without resistance. The being turned toward Earth. None endured. Dr. Maya Carter felt her heart pounding. If not power. She whispered. Then what? The being answered. Your species has demonstrated a statistically impossible trait. Every screen focused on a single image. Not a spaceship. Not a weapon. A human hand reaching to help another human stand after a disaster. Then another image. Astronauts risking their lives to rescue crewmates. Doctors treating strangers during pandemics. Scientists from rival nations sharing discoveries. Ordinary people helping one another during floods, earthquakes, and fires. The being continued. You cooperate beyond biological expectation. Another image appeared. The Apollo-Soyuz handshake. International crews aboard space stations. Global disaster relief efforts. Open scientific collaboration. Humanity's greatest achievements, not in conquest, but in collaboration. For millions of civilizations, the being said, survival ended when competition exceeded cooperation. The chamber fell silent. Your species repeatedly chooses to rebuild together. Then the being's expression changed. For the first time, it looked concerned. The observers have noticed this anomaly. The cosmic map darkened. Across the glowing pathways between galaxies, dozens of faint lights began moving. Not stars. Not ships. Something older. Something vast. The second test. The being said quietly, begins now. The map zoomed toward the Milky Way. At its outer edge, one tiny light appeared. Then another. Then a third. Within seconds, hundreds of ancient objects emerged from intergalactic darkness. No alarms sounded. No fleets assembled beyond Earth's atmosphere. No planet-sized weapons emerged from the darkness. Instead, the observers arrived in complete silence. The first object appeared exactly where the moon should have been. For one terrifying heartbeat, the moon simply vanished. Around the world, billions looked into the night sky and saw only empty space. Then, less than a second later, the moon returned. Unchanged. Its orbit remained stable. The tides continued normally. Astronomers confirmed it had never physically moved. Something else had happened. For a fraction of a second, reality itself had been measured. The phenomenon repeated across the solar system. Mars disappeared, returned. Jupiter vanished, returned. Even the sun blinked out for an instant before blazing back into existence. Each event lasted less than a heartbeat. No energy was released. No damage occurred. It was as though the universe itself had paused to ask a question. Dr. Maya Carter reviewed the sensor logs. They're not attacking. General Brooks looked exhausted. Then what are they doing? Carter enlarged a graph. They're comparing. Comparing what? She looked up. The universe, before and after they observed it. A mathematician suddenly stood. His face had gone pale. "I've found something." He projected a sequence of impossibly large numbers. Every disappearance, every reappearance, produced the same microscopic discrepancy. Not in gravity, not in light, in probability. Tiny quantum events throughout the solar system shifted by immeasurably small amounts. Electrons chose slightly different paths. Photons scattered differently. Radioactive atoms decayed in altered sequences. Individually meaningless. Collectively impossible. The universe was being tested for consistency. The luminous guardian appeared once more. Its expression was more urgent than before. "You now understand." "No," Dr. Carter admitted. "We understand almost nothing." The being nodded. "That is why you still have hope." The stars dissolved into another vision. This time it was not a galaxy. It was the universe itself. Threads of light stretched between every cluster of galaxies, weaving a structure so vast that language failed to describe it. "It is alive," the Guardian said. "Not alive like an animal. Not alive like a civilization. Alive the way a forest is alive. A single interconnected existence. Every star, every black hole, every atom, every living mind, all part of one immense cosmic organism. The observers preserve its stability." General Brooks frowned. "So they're protecting the universe?" "Yes. And destroying civilizations? If necessary." No one spoke. The Guardian continued. "Civilizations eventually become capable of altering spacetime itself." Images flashed across the screens. Stars moved from their natural positions. Galaxies reshaped. Entire regions of space rewritten by technologies beyond imagination. Most species use this power to ensure their own survival. Another image. The fabric of reality began to tear. The universe cannot survive unlimited alteration. Then came the revelation. The first advanced civilization had accidentally damaged reality billions of years ago while trying to escape entropy. The wound had nearly spread across the observable universe. To prevent total collapse, the observers were created, not as conquerors, not as rulers, as custodians. Their only purpose was simple: measure every civilization before it became powerful enough to endanger existence itself. Those deemed unstable were erased before reaching that point. Cold, efficient, absolute. Dr. Carter finally asked the question haunting everyone. "Has anyone ever passed?" The Guardian became silent. For a long moment it simply watched humanity. Then it answered, "No." A wave of despair swept through mission control. "No civilization? None. Then why test us? The Guardian's luminous form flickered. Because. Its voice softened. You are different. The room leaned forward. For millions of years, intelligence has evolved according to one pattern. It displayed hundreds of alien civilizations, each unified under one species, one culture, one biological origin, one way of thinking. Then Earth appeared, a planet divided by languages, religions, governments, histories, cultures. Yet repeatedly, when facing extinction-level threats, humanity cooperated. Not perfectly, not always peacefully, but often enough to survive. The Guardian highlighted moments throughout history: global disease outbreaks, asteroid monitoring programs, international scientific collaborations, rescue missions that crossed borders, space exploration built by former rivals. You disagree more than any civilization we have recorded. The room looked confused. The Guardian smiled faintly. And yet, another image appeared. You continue choosing one future. General Brooks whispered. Our diversity. Dr. Carter finished the sentence. Is our strength. The Guardian nodded. Every civilization before you sought perfect unity. Images of extinct empires filled the screens. They eliminated disagreement. They eliminated uncertainty. They eliminated alternatives. And eventually, they eliminated themselves. The observers had never encountered a civilization that could argue fiercely, compete relentlessly, invent independently, and still unite when survival demanded it. Humanity was chaotic, unpredictable, messy. To the observers, those qualities had once appeared dangerous. Now, they looked essential. Without warning, every screen turned black. The Guardian disappeared. A new presence entered the transmission. No shape, no face, only a voice so deep it seemed to resonate inside every atom. Evaluation acknowledged. The temperature in mission control dropped several degrees. Even the AI systems stopped processing for a fraction of a second. The voice continued. Species designation, humanity. Another pause. Probability of universal instability. Numbers began appearing. They changed too quickly to read. Trillions of calculations every second. Finally, the numbers stopped. Indeterminate. The Guardian had said no civilization had ever passed. Now the observers had encountered something even stranger. They couldn't reach a conclusion. For the first time in their existence, the judges disagreed. And across the silent darkness between galaxies, something ancient began to awaken. Something that even the observers had hoped would never notice Earth. The word indeterminate did not fade. It persisted. Across every system on Earth, the transmission remained embedded in reality itself like a scar that refused to heal. Screens could not clear it. Instruments could not overwrite it. Even shutting down power grids did nothing. It wasn't data anymore. It was a judgment that had stalled mid-sentence. Dr. Maya Carter stared at the frozen word. This has never happened before, she whispered. General Brooks didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the live feed from the outer solar system. Where the observers had been, there was now something else. A structure was forming. Not arriving. Not appearing. Forming. Space near the edge of the solar system began to fold inward like paper pressed into a shape too complex for geometry. Stars behind it bent, not through gravity, but through redefinition of perspective itself. The universe was being edited, piece by piece, and Earth was at the center of the revision. The voice returned. Not the Guardian. Not the observers. Something deeper, older, less certain. Inconsistency detected. The words did not come through speakers. They came through thought. Every human on Earth understood them instantly in their own language, as if comprehension had been injected directly into the mind. Carter clutched her head. Something is talking through the system itself. The cosmic map reappeared, but it was no longer stable. Entire galaxies flickered in and out of existence like faulty projections. Civilizations previously marked as erased reappeared for fractions of seconds before vanishing again. Reality itself was arguing with itself. The observers were no longer in agreement. Something had fractured their judgment. Then came the second message. This species cannot be classified. A pause. Then, IT defies all survival models. General Brooks turned sharply. Survival models? Carter nodded slowly. They don't just observe civilizations. She swallowed. They simulate them. Silence. And in every model, she continued, civilizations eventually collapse the same way. Brooks finished it. Power leads to control. Carter nodded. Control leads to uniformity. Uniformity leads to stagnation. And stagnation, Brooks looked toward the screen, leads to extinction. The structure beyond the solar system stabilized. It was now visible, not as an object, but as a boundary. A thin membrane of impossible geometry stretching across interstellar space, enclosing the solar system like a sealed chamber. Earth was no longer being observed. It was being contained. The Guardian reappeared, but damaged. Its form flickered like a corrupted signal. They are dividing, it said. The observers have never encountered contradiction at this scale. Carter stepped forward. Why are they conflicted now? The Guardian hesitated. Because your species produces outcomes that violate probability itself. It displayed the data. Every civilization previously tested followed a predictable curve. Rise, expansion, conflict, collapse, entropy. But Earth showed something different. Multiple curves, branching outcomes, parallel futures, civilizations that should have failed, surviving, wars that should have ended humanity, leading to cooperation, crises that should have caused extinction, resulting in innovation. You are not a single trajectory, the Guardian said. You are a field of outcomes. General Brooks frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does to them, Carter replied quietly. They're used to predicting civilizations like physics equations. She looked at the unstable sky outside the station windows. But humanity isn't an equation. A pause. It's a contradiction machine. Then the final observer voice returned. This time, it was no longer calm. Error. Species behavior unresolvable. Another voice overlapped it. Recalculating. Another. Rejecting prior conclusion. And another. Civilization exceeds model limits. The containment structure around the solar system began to tremble. Not physically, conceptually, like a mathematical system losing coherence. The edges of reality flickered. Stars outside the boundary shifted into impossible configurations. The universe itself seemed uncertain how to classify Earth. The Guardian spoke urgently. This is unprecedented. What is? Carter asked. But she already knew. The answer came anyway. The observers are attempting to reclassify you. Brooks narrowed her eyes. To what? The Guardian's light dimmed. Something they have never defined before. A pause. Then the word appeared across every system on Earth. Not translated. Not interpreted. Just displayed. Variable. The solar system went silent. Even the background radiation of space seemed to pause. For the first time in recorded cosmic history, a civilization had not been judged as safe or unsafe, powerful or weak. stable or unstable, advanced or primitive. It had been labeled undefined. Then, from beyond the containment boundary, a new signal emerged. It was not a message, not a warning, not a test. It was a question so old it predated the observers themselves. What do you do with a species that cannot be predicted? The transmission ended. The containment boundary did not expand. It did not collapse. It simply remained, waiting. And somewhere in the silence between galaxies, something that had watched reality for billions of years finally admitted the one thing it had never accounted for. Earth was not being evaluated anymore. It was being studied for a new rule of existence. The question remained suspended across the universe like a wound in logic. What do you do with a species that cannot be predicted? For the first time, there was no immediate answer. Not from the observers. Not from the Guardian. Not from the ancient systems that had silently judged civilizations for billions of years. Because Earth had done something none of them were designed to handle. It had broken classification itself. Inside Mission Control, Dr. Maya Carter stood motionless. The containment boundary around the solar system was still there. But it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a mirror. As if something beyond it was now studying not Earth, but the system that had tried to define Earth. General Brooks spoke quietly. So we're not being judged anymore. Carter shook her head. No. A pause. We're being observed differently. Across the solar system, the observers continued their silent conflict. Their structure, once unified, had fractured into competing interpretations. One faction insisted humanity was a statistical anomaly. Another claimed it was a systemic error. A third argued something unprecedented, that humanity was not an outcome at all, but a generator of outcomes. The containment boundary flickered, then stabilized, then flickered again. Reality itself was struggling to maintain consistency, and Earth was the reason. The Guardian returned one final time, but it was no longer alone. Behind it, faint silhouettes formed, thousands of observer intelligences, each projecting a different conclusion about humanity. Their voices overlapped, conflicted, unresolved. Eliminate variable, integrate variable, observe longer, redefine laws. The arguments were not emotional. They were mathematical, and none of them reached consensus. Dr. Carter stepped forward. If you've observed us for 470 million years, her voice was steady, then you already know what we do when we can't solve something. Silence. The Guardian focused on her. Clarify. Carter exhaled. We don't delete the unknown. A pause. We explore it. For the first time, something like hesitation passed through the observer collective. Not fear. Not confusion. Something far rarer in their existence. Uncertainty about their own method. The cosmic map reassembled itself one final time. But this time, it did not show civilizations as fixed points. It showed possibilities branching endlessly outward from Earth. War, peace, expansion, collapse, rebirth, cooperation, division. Each path alive, each path real, each path unstable. And at the center of it all, humanity. The Guardian spoke softly. You are not compatible with prediction systems. Carter nodded. That's not a flaw. A pause. It's freedom. The observers paused. Then, for the first time since their creation, they did something no intelligence in cosmic history had ever done. They requested consensus. Across billions of observer nodes, calculations began. Not to judge Earth. Not to classify it. But to answer the question, should something unpredictable be allowed to continue existing? The answer took 16 seconds. The same rhythm as the signal that had started it all. And when the computation ended, the result appeared across every system in existence. Not as words, not as numbers, but as a new rule of reality being drafted in real time. Undefined species require observation without interference. The containment boundary dissolved, not destroyed, rewritten. The solar system was no longer isolated. It was now part of a broader network of observation, but without judgment, without evaluation, without erasure. The Guardian looked at Earth one last time. This has never happened before. Carter smiled faintly. Neither have we. The observer presence began to withdraw, but before fading completely, the final message arrived. Not to the world governments, not to the scientists, not to humanity as institutions, but directly to every human mind. A simple line, a new beginning, continue, and then silence. The sky returned to normal. Stars resumed their familiar positions. The moon reappeared in full. Jupiter rotated peacefully in the distance. The solar system was unchanged. But something fundamental had shifted. Earth was no longer a subject of judgment. It was a living variable in a cosmic equation that no longer had a fixed solution. And somewhere far beyond the galaxies, the observers began something they had never done before. They started learning, not about humanity, but from it. The end.